Shalom, this is Levi Shore. Welcome back to Sweet and Good Torah. Today we're going to learn Parsha Devarim. So it's very interesting. In this week's Parsha, Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, he gives tochacha, he gives rebuke to the Jewish people for failing, and he mentions 7 out of the 10 tests that we failed when we were in the Midbar. We failed in our 40 years of traveling through the desert. So Avraham Aveinu, Abraham passed all of his 10 tests, and we'll talk about them soon, and we'll talk about the 7 that Moshe rebuked us for. So Avraham Aveinu, Abraham, he passed all his 10 tests, and there's a concept in the Torah of Maaseh Avot, Siman L'Banim. So the actions of the fathers, whatever Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, whatever Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob did, it's Siman L'Banim. It's a sign for the sons. It's a sign for the Jewish people for all generations that whatever they accomplish, they created the spiritual potential that we can accomplish it. So it's a big question. So why did we fail the 10 tests in the Midbar, in the desert, and when are we going to pass these 10 tests? So first let's go through what 10 tests Avraham actually passed. So the first was he recognized that Hashem is the sole power in the universe. That was the first test. The second test is that when King Nimrod told him to denounce Hashem and worship Avodah Zarah, to worship an idol, Avraham refused, and he was thrown into this burning hot, white-hot furnace of Or Kasdim, and he miraculously survived. Hashem gave him, miraculously sent a nace, a miracle, to help him survive. So the third test was Lech Lecha, where Hashem tells Abraham, just leave your home, leave your hometown, and just go to land. I'm not going to tell you where. You have to have emunah in me, you have to trust in me, and I'll just tell you where to go. And the land was Eretz Yisrael. But Abraham wasn't even told where to go. He was just told, uproot yourself, leave where you live, and just go. So the fourth test was then, once he gets to Eretz Yisrael, there's a famine. There's no food in Eretz Yisrael, and he has to go down to Mitzrayim. He has to go down to Egypt. So the fifth test is his wife Sarah is captured by the king of Egypt, but captured by the Pharaoh, the Paro, and then he has to have emunah that Hashem will rescue Sarah from the Paro's palace. So then the sixth test is that his nephew Lot is captured in this great war of the 4 kings against the 5 kings, and then Abraham has to get in the midst of this first world war, this ancient world war, to save his nephew Lot. And this was even after Lot had left him, even after Lot had stopped being his student and moved to Sodom, moved to Sodom. Not a great place to live. It's like your prized Torah student leaves you, says, I'm going to just go to Las Vegas. Not the Colo in Las Vegas. I'm going to live right on the strip, right by the casino, right in the casino. Oh, chas v'shalom. And it's like, but even after all that, he still, goes into this war to save Lot. So the 7th test was the bris bein habasarim, the actual covenant that Avraham makes with Hashem. It's the actual covenant between the Jewish people and Hashem, between us and God. And it's also related to, like Avraham asked the question, how do I know that my children will inherit the land of Israel? So the 8th test was giving himself a bris milah. He gave it to his son Yishmael, who I think was 13 at the time. And then when Yitzhak was finally born, he gave Yitzhak the bris. But the test was of circumcision, and that was the 8th test. The 9th test is he had to kick Hagar, his second wife Hagar, and her son Yishmael. He had to kick them out of the camp because Sarah said that Yishmael was having a negative influence on Yitzhak. He loved both his sons, but he had to kick Hagar, his second wife, and his son Yishmael out of the camp. And that was a tough test for him. And then the final test, the ultimate test, was the Akedah, where he had to offer his son Yitzhak. But Hashem showed that he doesn't really want he doesn't want human sacrifice, and instead of human sacrifice, chas v'shalom, Hashem created the korbanos. He said, here's a ram, you offer the ram. So even if the Jewish people sin, he gave us a mechanism in the Beis HaMikdash, in the temple, so people could live, that you offer the animal instead. And it's not great, we don't want to do it, but it's like, and if we can, not, fall into the temptation of Avera, it's something we don't have to do. Then we don't need this kapara to offer the animal. Okay, so one thing is interesting. So in Egypt, when we had the Geula, the redemption from Egypt, from Mitzrayim, the Gemara tells us that redemption, that Geula, will pale in comparison to the Geula we have coming in the future with Mashiach. So what's interesting is, it seems like those 10, the Eser Makos, the 10 plagues, Hashem did each of those 10 plagues to build emunah in us, to give us the strength that we would be able to pass the 10 tests when we went out to the Midbar, we went out to the desert. But unfortunately, those 10 Makos didn't, for whatever reason, build this drum. So Moshe goes through how we failed, and he mentions 7 of the 10 in this week's Parsha. So he says the first test we failed was 31 days after leaving Mitzrayim, after leaving Egypt. We complained, and we wanted meat also with the man. So we would rather have died in Egypt, we said, and it was the lack of emunah. Oh, I'm sorry if I didn't say it. So we're getting help today from the Midrash Says by Rabbi Moshe Weissman. Amazing Sfarim. If you have the opportunity, he has all these Midrashim. They're translated into to English, and we're getting help from Rabbi Weissman today. So the first was that we wanted meat even on top of the man. So this may relate to the famine. I mean, that seems an easier one to correlate, but there's something else that may relate to the famine. So I'm not exactly sure exactly which of the 10 tests this relates to, but we failed that test that even with the man, getting this miraculous manna from Hashem, this heavenly bread that fell from the sky, we still said, oh, we want meat also. So the second test we failed in the Midbar was worshiping the Baal Peor and Shittim, and it's related to, not only is it related to idol worship, but it's related to like physical immorality, like the temptations of illicit physical desire. We failed that test with the daughters of Midian, and that I think is related to maybe Sarah getting captured in Pharaoh's palace, in the palace of the Paro. I think somehow it may be related. I haven't really sat down and really like exactly what the 10 tests in the Midbar and how they relate exactly to the the 10 tests of Avraham. But so the third test we failed was we panicked at the Yam Suf. When we were at the Red Sea, we panicked. And I think this is the emunah that Hashem tested in Abraham, where he didn't bow, down to the idol as King Nimrod demanded it, and King Nimrod threw him into the fiery furnace, and Abraham wasn't scared because he knew Hashem, was the ultimate power. And I think like this same emunah is maybe what the test of the Yam Suf, of the splitting of the Red Sea, was all about. We saw the king, we saw the Pharaoh coming with his army of 600 chariots, which the modern day equivalent, by the way, would be like 600 tanks. So it's extremely powerful army, probably millions of soldiers. Just because these are the chariots, those are the tanks, it means they have massive millions and millions of soldiers. So it's very scary. And then we just have this sea in front of us, and no one ever heard of a sea splitting before. I mean, we have now because of this nace, this miracle, but they didn't. So it's this great test of emunah. So the fourth test that we failed was accepting the spies' lashon hara when we were in Paran. The spies, there was one spy from each tribe that was sent to spy out the land, and we unfortunately on Tisha B'Av we listened to their lashon hara, and we failed the test to go into Eretz Yisrael on Tisha B'Av. So I think this relates to the test of Lech Lecha. I think this relates to the test of when Hashem says, leave your home and go into this great land, this land flowing with milk and honey I have prepared for you. And that's the test that Abraham passed, but we unfortunately failed when we were in the Midbar because we listened to the spies' lashon hara. And we can fix this on Tisha B'Av by mourning and crying for the loss of the Beis HaMikdash, not being in Eretz Yisrael. We can fix this on Tisha B'Av. So we have a way of fasting and crying on Tisha B'Av that we can fix this mistake. So then the fifth test we failed was, and I think that relates, right? I think that relates to Lech Lecha maybe. So the fifth test was we complained about the man. Now, the Midrash, Rabbi Weissman says, and the Midrash says that it was bad for two reasons. One, it was food that like Hashem gave to us, so we're not appreciating that this is heavenly food that Hashem gives. So on normal bread, we make a hamotzi lechem min haaretz. We bless Hashem that He's taken the bread out of the earth, out of the land, and then here on the man, we made this amazing bracha. We said hamotzi lechem min hashamayim, that He takes the bread out of heaven itself and gave it to us. So we didn't appreciate that Hashem gave us the manna. And then the second thing Rabbi Weissman says is, from the Midrash, he says that the manna was the most refined, it was the greatest of all food, it had no waste in it. It was only tov, there was no ra, it was all good, there was no ra, there was no evil in the food, and we didn't have to there was no waste product. We didn't have to go to the bathroom. So that takes, think about how productive you could be if you didn't have to worry about going to the bathroom all the time. But it's funny because if you just get stuck in the natural world, it started to scare the Jewish people. Like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to the bathroom. Like, this could be really dangerous to my health. But if you're on the level of spirituality, you're thinking like, wow, this is amazingly refined food that Hashem gave to us, this miraculous food, and we don't have to waste time on these physical deficiencies, and we can spend all our time learning Torah all day and elevating ourselves spiritually. So the sixth test that we failed was Korach's rebellion. And right now, I'm not sure if the man also relates to famine or where that relates to the 10 tests. I'm not exactly sure there. So the sixth test that we failed is Korach's rebellion. And I think Korach's rebellion could be related to recognition of Hashem, but we'll see the seventh one also could be, recognition of Hashem. But like Korach was questioning if Hashem really appointed, did he really appoint like Aaron and Moshe to be the leaders? Because he was saying, all the Jewish people are holy, and he wasn't accepting that Hashem was picking the leaders of the Jewish people. So it was a lack of emunah that Hashem is, he's choosing for us the best of, best leadership for us. And then the seventh, and maybe the biggest of the 10 tests, was unfortunately the Chet HaEgel, the golden calf. And there, like, that also may be a recognition of Hashem, because we didn't appreciate that, Hashem is our Melech, Hashem's always with us, and even as great a human leader as Moshe Rabbeinu was, as Moses was, we always have Hashem, no matter who our leader is. So what's interesting is, these 10 makos that Hashem gave us in Mitzrayim. Here, let me try to shift for a little bit. I'm losing the sun, so I'm not in the dark here. So we get a little more in the sun for the finale here. So it's interesting. So the Gula from Egypt, it says in Gemara, the final Gula is going to be so much greater. And I think our Masorah also is that we're going to have these, instead of 10 plagues just in Egypt, we're going to have these 10 global plagues. And that's going to start to build the Jewish people's emunah in Hashem. And then I think the goal is, because Avraham passed these tests in Yemotza Mashiach, sometime in the Messianic age, Mashiach is going to lead us, and as a nation, we're going to pass all these 10 tests. And it's going to be this tremendous Kiddush Hashem, where then the world will get to see like Hashem Echad, like Hashem's holy name is one, there's no other power, and Shemo Echad, in His name, there's only one name, there's only one power, it's only Hashem. And when the Jewish people pass these tests. So then you may say, but what about this door of the Midbar? What about this generation that came out of Egypt and failed these 10 tests? Well, we have Techias HaMesim. We have the resurrection of the dead. So when this generation comes back with Moshe as their leader, they may be involved with the rest. They probably will be involved with the rest of the Jewish people, and now finally completing these 10 tasks and making this huge Kiddush Hashem in the world. So may we see this quickly in our days. May Hashem quickly send Mashiach. May this Tisha B'Av be the last that we're mourning for the temple, and may we soon have a temple in Yerushalayim, in Jerusalem. Okay, I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you back again soon on Sweet and Good Torah.